welcome to another episode of Pathfinder, a podcast by Payload, the leading digital media company in the space industry. Our guest today is Stan Herasimenka, CEO and co-founder of Solestial, a solar power company for the space industry. Solestial manufactures solar panels and aims to reduce the cost of solar by 90% versus traditional panels. Let's get started. Stan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Hey, Mo.
So let's get started with what is Solestial? Tell us a little bit about what it is you're building.
Sure. Solestial is a solar energy company for space. So we develop our own silicon solar cells and solar modules that are optimized for the use in space. And we will be selling our solar modules to satellite manufacturers that will, fly them to space and power their satellites.
How did you get into this business? What prompted you to start the company?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually an interesting story. I'm not a space person. I've never kind of thought of being an astronaut or flying to the moon and stuff like that. I never thought of working in aerospace either. Okay, so that's something new and exciting to me. I'm a solar person, so I really enjoy photovoltaics. So I've been doing photovoltaics for over 15 years in my life. And then it just happened by accident that the technology that we've been developing for terrestrial use turned out to have some value for space. That's one thing. So we had this nice technology that can solve some problems people have in space with power generation. And then the demand for a lot of solar in space materialized just a few years. So, these two things came together, and then we thought, oh my God, this is a great business opportunity. So let's do it.
What are, let's kind of start high level first, because I don't know how many listeners actually know about the space solar market specifically, but talk a little bit about what are the key differences between a terrestrial solar cell that's used for power generation on Earth versus one that you would use in space? Are you, let's ask the really simple question. Can you take a terrestrial solar cell, throw it up attach it to a satellite and fly it up in space? Does it still work? Maybe talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely, yeah. This will totally work, and that's what we believe. Actually, Starlink satellites are using terrestrial solar cells, and the interesting thing that on Earth, most solar cells and solar modules are made using silicon technology, and people start using silicon in space in '60s. So it's pretty much the first solar cell ever built flew to space. In '60s, and then sometimes in 2000, the space industry switched from silicon to gallium arsenide solar cell, which is a different type of solar cell. It had higher efficiency, and then with time it evolved to something they call a multi-junction tandem solar cell, which really has a high efficiency. So 30% versus 20% here on Earth. So that's the difference. And then people actually made this multi-junction solar cells very, very robust so that they can stay in space for a long time without, with minimum degradation. So that's why satellite manufacturers really like this technology, so that you can make, a compact, lightweight solar array and with very good stability. Now, on Earth, the industry evolved in a slightly different direction. Like, first off, the environment here is totally different. So they optimized for terrestrial environment, not for space environment. But then they also pushed the manufacturability and cost. So the entire industry, like mining materials, like purifying materials, growing ingots, making wafers, making solar cells. So all this huge industry emerged over the last few decades to make the silicon module the way we use it today. It's very, very affordable, and then it's available in huge quantities. But the problem is that it's not really good for space as it is, because if we send it there, it's actually quite heavy and bulky, so you cannot do it. Like, you cannot just buy it in Home Depot and send it to space as it is. But it also will degrade in space really fast, because we have radiation in space, so the solar cells degrade. We have some huge temperature extremes in space, so then the interconnects will degrade. There's a lot of UV light in space. There is micrometeorites, so all sorts of things. So we have the incumbent solution, which is really great but very expensive and available in really small quantities. And then we have this terrestrial silicon, which available in any quantity, and it's very affordable, but it's not good for long-term use in space. So that's the problem.
If I integrated a terrestrial solar cell with a satellite, put it up into low Earth orbit, how long does it last before you have significant degradation of power? I'm just more curious how quickly does the radiation impact the power generation?
Yeah. We can be kind of specific here, and it's an interesting question. So we think that Starlink guys started using terrestrial solar cells, although I never saw their solar arrays, and I don't have any insight, so I cannot say with like 100% guarantee. But we believe that they use like standard terrestrial cells. They package them in some novel way, so so it's a thin and lightweight package that you can actually stow, and then. To have your satellite very thin so that you can launch 60 pieces in one rocket. And then, so that's what they've done. But then if you look at the Starlink satellites, though, I think they're rated for like 4 or 5 years. And then we see the satellites that were launched back in 2019 started to be, deorbiting pretty much now. And if you look at the graph, how many satellites are kind of being decommissioned. So it started going up, which is telling me, okay, well, it's not necessarily the solar array, but and maybe it's a solar array, but maybe it's a battery. But some components actually degraded to the stage that its satellite is no longer useful. So we think that for terrestrial silicon, 4 or 5 years in LEO is kind of the threshold. But also, we think what Starlink guys did, they oversized their solar arrays so that they could afford more degradation than other satellite manufacturers would afford because they own the launch. So now you have 3 times larger array. Okay, so it degrades faster, but it's still enough for you. So that's what we believe what happened. This allowed them to live for like 4 or 5 years. Now they are in LEO, so it's 600 kilometers away from radiation belts. So there is a lot of missions that are going to do orbit race and then go to GEO, for example, or it's a lot of interest in going to MEO. So in MEO, your spacecraft will receive 100 times more radiation than Starlink satellites receive in LEO, 100 times more. So this means that instead of 5 years, you will have like several months of life and until they kind of die. And then when you do your orbit race, you can also receive like 10, 20 times more radiation during this couple of months that you're doing the orbit race. So in heavy radiation environments, the terrestrial silicon is a no-go at all. So you have some niche where they can be used, but I think it's not a solution long-term, especially if you envision having infrastructure in space that will last there for like 10, 20 years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So it's my understanding that SpaceX does not produce their own solar cells. They outsource them to a company in Taiwan. Is that right?
We don't know. There are some indications, in public space that that's what they're doing. Maybe not necessarily Taiwan, but yes. So there were, but I just don't know. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so that kind of leads me to my next question, which is like right now, setting yourself aside, who are the main players in solar, in solar cell technology for space use cases? Like where, if you're a satellite, if you're a spacecraft manufacturer, where are you going right now?
Yeah. So we can actually differentiate 2 worlds. So there is the incumbent 3.5 multi-junction world. That's one thing. And then there is an emerging silicon world, which we belong to and which we hope we will lead in a year from now. So the incumbent world is historically between 3 major manufacturers. So that would be Spectralab, which was acquired by Boeing like a long time ago. So this is a Boeing company. And then there is Solero, which previously it was MCore, then Solar. Now it's acquired by Rocket Lab, so it's a part of a big Rocket Lab these days. And then there is a German manufacturer called Azure. So they were acquired by a Canadian company called 5N Plus. So technically they're Canadians right now. And this is like the company that owns the germanium wafer production. So this three, a little bit of solar cells can be built by Japanese Sharp, maybe a little bit in China, a little bit in Russia here and there, maybe somewhere else in Europe. But in Europe, but these three major companies. And then I think their market share is pretty much equal. Maybe Solera kind of is a little bit bigger than Spectral App and Azure. And so this is 3.5 world. Now silicon is interesting because Starlink showed that so there is a case here. The LEO constellations are possible. So now they have 5,500 satellites, planning for even more. So it's a lot of affordable solar is required for that. There is us who are trying to upgrade terrestrial silicon technology, so make it last in space longer. And we know that there are some other companies that are actually relying on terrestrial silicon solar cells. So they want to start with that and then maybe upgrade the package around it a little bit. And so that's their product. And, we think that, if we want to build something that really solves the problem, we need to upgrade both the cell and the package around it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then just for the benefit of the audience, can you just walk us through what 3.5 means? Because I know that's a commonly used term in solar cell technology.
Yeah. So usually, they call 3.5 as a group of semiconductor materials, which is kind of an alloy or a composition of elements from periodic table group 3 and 5 put together. So silicon belongs to group 4, as well as germanium. So as I mentioned, in 2000 they started with gallium arsenide, which was the single junction solar cell. And then as they evolved, so they came up with a structure where you technically have 3 different solar cells stacked on top of each other, and each one is optimized for a portion of solar spectrum, to convert it to electricity more efficiently. So this way, because you have, instead of 1 solar cell, you have 3, you can get higher efficiencies. So the challenge with this, although it's very beautiful technology, so the science is amazing and the device structure is amazing. The challenge here is that you cannot scale the production of these 3.5 solar cells because you have multiple barriers, materials, supply chain, equipment, like trained engineers, like anywhere you look, you have the barriers for scaling. So that's really the problem with this technology.
So you got into this a little bit, but let's talk about the market sizing. And maybe let's use, I don't know if you've looked at it from the perspective of just the sheer megawatts of power required, right, between existing LEO satellite constellations versus MEO, GEO, broader infrastructure. Have you done any work to help understand what is that supply demand gap that you think is going to be, that's going to be created over the next, call it, 5-10 years?
Yeah, and this is actually the first time I sat down and did this exercise back in 2018 when the SpaceX announced Starlink, and then I realized, oh my God, so this is not going to be a CubeSat. They actually going to build a pretty big satellite with a pretty big solar array, and then they were talking about 10,000 satellites, each one would have. Again, I don't have any insight. I never saw the solar array, but let's say it's 5 kilowatt solar array. So it's 50 megawatt of solar will be needed to deploy the entire constellation. And then the 3.5 industry can produce 1 per year. So 1 and 50. So that's the difference.
Wait, sorry. I just trying to understand that. So 15 megawatts of power is required by this constellation. And you're saying, saying that overall, right now, we you said that we can generate a megawatt of
again, I don't have the exact numbers because companies don't disclose how much they kind of produce per year, but you can think about our internal estimates. So it's around 1 megawatt a year of 3.5s is available. Maybe they have larger capacity. So maybe if they kind of work really hard, they can push it to 2 megawatts. Okay, 2. But actually nobody wants to buy 2 megawatt of 3.5s at the price they offer. So that's another problem. But then, so we mentioned...
Why is that? Because, why is that? Maybe I'm not going to guess. I'll just ask you.
Why is the price high, or why nobody wants to buy?
Why no one wants to buy why 2 megawatt?
Okay, well, let's say you're developing Starlink Gen 2 satellite, okay, and then again the rumors and the estimates. Let's say it will carry a 10 kilowatt solar array, 10 kilowatt per satellite, which in geo they use like 20 kilowatt, but it's a big solar array, and then you come to a 3.5 manufacturer, and then you end up paying for the solar array $1,000 per watt. Okay, $1,000 per watt. So your solar array is 10 million bucks, and the budget for your spacecraft is half million. And then you're like, well, okay, that not gonna work. So we need to do something else. So that's why the radical cost reduction is a must for all the LEO telecom constellations to become a reality. And that's what Starlink proved that this is working. So we want to bring it to the next level. So then, the competitors can start using it that who don't own the launch, and the solar arrays should be developed to last longer in space. Very important. So 8-10 years, and then survive the orbit race, which is get some radiation and survive that. So that's what we want to do.
I see. Okay. Well, in that case, let's talk about Celestial. So what is the core product that you're offering today, at least to begin, right? And you've mentioned a number of different things, which is, cost, of course, is a huge piece of it. How long it lasts, all of these things. It sounds like you're trying to solve.
Yeah. So we're looking at having two types of product. It will be a bare solar cell, and it will be an encapsulated, interconnected module. So if you think about the satellite, you usually see something they call solar array wings. And then if you look at the wings, so it's comprised of these rectangular panels. And then our module would be attached onto the panel, and then the panels would be all kind of connected together by hinges, and this is how you would open it to space. So we're not offering like turnkey solar arrays, although satellite manufacturers would really love to source the entire thing from one supplier. So we're offering the modules that will then need to be integrated to make solar array wings. And then we see people approach it different ways. So some teams that have enough expertise in-house, they want to build the solar arrays themselves, solar array wings. So they want to source solar modules from us and then do all the deployment, all these mechanical components themselves. Some want to outsource these deployment system to some other companies. So now there are 3 parties in this configuration. So, but then some people, and then you can think about primes in particular, they want to source bare solar cells because they want to do their own interconnection and kind of packaging, and they do have expertise. The people working at primes, and I mean, Lockheed, Northrop, and Maxar, and Boeing. So they have like decades of experience developing these things. So they want to kind of introduce innovation step by step, and then start with a solar cell, and then do the rest kind of the conventional way. And we're happy to supply solar cells. If people see the value in the bare solar cell, we're kind of happy to do that. Okay.
What is the reason not to have a turnkey solution?
What we, originally, before I kind of started talking to all the satellite manufacturers, I thought, yeah, why all satellites are different? Why do they have all solar array wings different? I thought, let's build a universal wing that will fit everything. Or let's say there will be like 3 different wings, small, medium, and big, and then it will cover all the needs. And this is not happening. That's a bummer, but we see that all satellites are somewhat different, and will we see unification in the future? Probably, but as of today, all solar arrays will be different, I think, over the next few years. So this universal building block that we're offering, the solar module, it can fit a lot of solar array concepts, but I don't think we will be able to come up with a universal solar array concept, because if we can do that, then you can envision, yes, like one company can mass produce the thing and offer it to everyone else. That would make sense. But then if you have all sorts of designs for the solar array, it turns out that it should be different kind of integrators who do the solar array part. Okay.
Now, and right now, or maybe not even right now, what are you targeting in terms of cost effectiveness versus like off the shelf solar arrays?
Yeah, this is actually an interesting question because there is no such thing as the off-the-shelf silicon solar array. You cannot like send the Home Depot modules to space because they use this brittle glass and then they have this aluminum frame. You still need to do some modification to make this thing work in space. And then usually the solution is not to find the suitable terrestrial package, because there are some things that people use for sailing boats or some flexible and thin, but those are not good for space as they are. So usually what people do, they start with a solar cell and then they come up with a package that is more space stable themselves, and then so this would be like off the shelf solution. So that's why it's not like 20 cents per watt anymore. After they do this modification, we think the cost they will have is between $5 and $10 per watt. Okay. Now, if we offer a product that can last in space substantially longer time,
and Stan, sorry, you said 20, you said 20 cents per watt.
That would be the cost of a Home Depot terrestrial module.
So okay. The terrestrial model that you're putting up on the roof of your house.
Yes, so that's 20. Actually, last year the average price was 13 cents per watt. So it's really, really cheap. But I think my point is that you cannot just shoot it to space as it is. You still need to do some mods. And then when you do the mods, because there is no like automated production lines in Asia, which you can tap for that, so you have to build it yourself. So the cost actually goes up. So I think if you are building a constellation and then you go into developing this package and then you build your production line, your costs will be like, $5, $10, $15 per watt. Okay. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, you have 3.5s, which I think at the time you kind of integrate it into solar array, you will pay it between $500 and $1,000 per watt, depending on a lot of factors. Maybe they can push it to like $300 per watt for the solar array. But I think today the prices are rather close to 1,000. Okay, so now we're going to offer a product in between in terms of price, but it will also be in between, and I think it will be a golden mean. So it will be closer to terrestrial kind of solution in terms of pricing. So we're looking at several tens of dollars per watt, but it won't suck in terms of performance. So it will deliver 8-10 years in LEO of lifespan with like minimum degradation. So.
And sorry, you said several tens of dollars. I just wanted to make sure that was correct. You said several tens of dollars per watt.
Yeah. It will be less than 100 for sure, but we will. It still depends on the contract. For bigger customers, I guess the price will be lower in general. But it also depends a little bit on the packaging. What kind of materials we will need to use, because it's not only solar cell, but all the encapsulants and the films that we're using. They also contribute to overall manufacturing cost. But
I just want to make sure I got this right. So you're saying terrestrial cells are about 20 cents a watt off the shelf, throw on your roof, 20 cents a watt. You said once you make it space grade, you said $5 to $15 a watt, right? So then how much are celestial cells going to be, or you're estimating, or range?
Yeah, so we want to push it to sub 10 eventually.
Oh, sub 10, I see.
Sub 10, yeah. But to start with, they will be more expensive. And then this is really the question, how fast we can scale production. So if, the bigger production line, the more automation we use, the lower will be manufacturing cost. The eventual goal is definitely to push it to below $10 per watt. We will start selling with higher price, and I just don't want to throw in the exact number
No.
because it's
You don't have to. I understand. No.
right.
So okay. So this is going to be a lead into my next question, which is okay. So if you have a product right now that's more expensive than existing, like, or taking a terrestrial cell and making it rad hard, or improve, creating additional improvements to it for space usage. What prompts a customer to say, okay, I'm okay paying that premium because there's all these different benefits that I'm getting from using Celestial. Like, maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you mentioned making cell red hard, but nobody can to make silicon cell red hard except Celestial. So that's our kind of core thing that we bring to the space solar world: red hard silicon solar cells that can last in space longer and achieve kind of minimum annual degradation. That's one thing. But then, solar cells degrade due to radiation damage, but there are other parts of the module that also degrade. So then the overall degradation can be really fast. So we are solving all these little things too. So then, terrestrial module would degrade at 5 to 10% per year rate. Ours will degrade 1 to 3% per year rate. So that's really the difference. But then also another important thing, and we see a lot of interest in this feature, because we make our solar cells extremely thin, and then the package around it is also thin and lightweight, we can now roll them around a spool. And then, if you saw the Rosa solar array at the International Space Station that were just deployed, so there is an interest in the industry to transition from hinged arrays to roll-out solar arrays. And then you cannot do it with terrestrial silicon cells because they are not flexible enough. And then you can do it with celestial cells because they are very thin and flexible. So the rollability is a very attractive feature. And then, if you do that, people, there are several advantages. You can kind of stow more solar in a smaller volume. So then, if you need to launch a lot of satellites, so this can be helpful. And then you can also reduce overall mass. So, going to LEO is kind of not a problem, but if you fly to the moon, mass is still a big factor. You suddenly pay not $1,000 per kilo, about $50,000 per kilo. So, volume and mass will be important for the moon, and further away you go from Earth, the more important it is. And you cannot achieve that with like off-the-shelf terrestrial silicon solar. So yeah. Just to summarize.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just want to summarize what's the difference so that you kind of clearly understand that. So it's a lower degradation rate in space, and it's overall kind of lower mass and being able to roll it out. So
I see. Okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So on your site, I read something. I read a term that I'm very curious about, which is self-curing radiation damage. What does that mean? What is self-curing radiation damage?
Yeah, so this is the core feature, the main innovation that, like I said, we bring to this space solar world. So we developed and created this silicon solar cell that, when it's out in space, it gets bombarded by high energy particles, can be electrons and protons as they go through a solar cell, they create some damage. Okay, and these are like crystalline defects that pull the performance down. So that's the mechanism for the radiation-induced degradation. And silicon solar cells do afraid of that a lot. 3.5 multi-junction cells, less. Okay, so they're much more stable. But silicon solar cells, and this is one of the reasons space people kind of transitioned to 3.5 technology, because of radiation degradation of silicon. So it's been like a holy grail of silicon technology, how to make the solar cell degrade less. And then we found that, and remember, it was by accident. We didn't kind of develop this on purpose. We just developed very thin silicon solar cell for terrestrial use. And motivation was, at the time, the silicon wafer was expensive. We thought, okay, let's use thinner wafer. It will be less expensive. All right. But then we, space people knew that if you make solar cell thinner, well, potentially some particles will kind of go through it without interaction. And this was the main idea behind starting testing it for space. And then we found that this is actually not the case. It still gets a lot of damage. But then we found that if you heat it up after radiation, it can recover its performance. And then, right. So it's like you do a little cut on your hand and it heals. So it's something like that. But then the specific thing about our solar cells is that we only need the temperature as low as 65 degrees C. Now you can do it with like from off the shelf solar cell, but you need to be at like 150 degrees C, 200 degrees C, the temperature that the solar cell would never ever see in near Earth. If you can do it at 65 C, okay, it changes everything. So this means that as soon as it gets warm, and your solar cells will see the sun, they will get warm. So all the damage that they got will be annealed, or we call it healed or cured. So then effectively, its performance not going to go down. So that's what self-healing. So the standard operation conditions for the solar cell is having the temperature, between 60 and 90 degrees C in lowest orbit. So it will always be warm in space. And then for us, it's warm enough to anneal all these radiation defects.
So I read about something called perovskite. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Can that self cure as well? Does that have similar properties?
Yeah. So just for context, perovskite is another type of semiconductor material that was kind of introduced into the solar world just a few years ago. It's very promising as itself, but also can form a top cell for silicon-based tandem. So that's really exciting. And then this structure is beating all kind of silicon efficiency records this day. So a lot of people working on integrating perovskite with silicon. So and you're right. People did some studies of perovskite layers. They radiated them, and then they saw that they self-healing is a slightly different thing. So they don't heal themselves at temperature. The mechanism is different, but they saw that the cell itself is quite stable, both under electron and proton irradiation. So now they have the different problems. So they need to get stability at temperature or under light or under UV light. So there is some work to do on the perovskite side of things. But when they come up with a stable cell structure and then to scale the process, it will make a perfect top cell for our silicon bottom cell. So then we can push the efficiency from 20% to 30% when the perovskite thing is ready. So then it won't make sense to use them as they are because the efficiency will be kind of lower. Like we will get the same performance as 3.5s, and then also it will have like minimum degradation because our cell will heal itself and perovskite cell just won't degrade. So that would be really awesome. And I think it will actually happen. So not next year. So the perovskite industry will still need some time again to make a stable cell which doesn't degrade due to other factors in space. And then they will need to scale production and everything. But I think we will see by 2030, we will see silicon perovskite tandems as a new standard for space solar technology.
Amazing. Well, okay, let's talk about manufacturing. So, how do you think about you've identified a problem, which is like the supply demand gap. It exists for a reason, right? It's just between acquiring raw materials and actually producing, you just can't keep up with demand. Like that's good and bad, right? How do you think about your own manufacturing capabilities and needs and scaling the business, right? Everyone talks about how difficult it is to scale manufacturing, especially with something like this. Like, how do you think how are you tackling that problem?
Yeah, what really helps is that we kind of leverage terrestrial solar industry, terrestrial silicon solar industry. And, as I mentioned, over the last 2-3 decades, it scaled enormously. And then all the equipment, all the materials is available. We do the upgrade. We need to make our solar cells extremely thin So that's one challenge we need to solve. And we actually developed the way to put our very thin solar cells through standard production lines. And we recently kind of demonstrated that we can do it using standard automation equipment. So we will just use the standard production equipment from the terrestrial silicon solar industry. So that will help us a lot. Now, on the module side, on the packaging side, so remember that this is also an important component for the overall kind of solar thing. So we are actually building a new process, a new way to interconnect solar cells, because there is just no way, no method ready to go to interconnect very thin solar cells. They just crack. Okay, so we came up with our own way to do that, and then we need to, to innovate some way we apply the encapsulants and how to have the front film protected from the environment. So all these little things we're developing ourselves, and it's a hard task. But we already, end of this year, we're looking at starting our 1 megawatt production line with both cells and modules. So, it will almost match the incumbent industry in terms of volume. And then eventually, this is just to kind of show you that it's hard, but we are solving it, and we will have a lot of space stable silicon solar cells and modules already by the end of this year. And then the good thing is that there will be no roadblocks for us for scaling. So we can go to 10, we can go to 100, we can make gigawatts of these things. So silicon really helps us here. All right.
Where are you based?
Yeah, we historically, technology comes out of Arizona State University in Tempe, Arizona. So we're actually still using ASU lab to make solar cells. We hoping to graduate sometime summer this year, so we will have our own facilities to make solar cells and modules. We're still based in Tempe, Arizona. But then at the next step, we will be looking at building, a larger scale production facility somewhere in the country. And then we're kind of still trying to find the best location. Maybe it will be in Colorado, maybe in Florida. So maybe in Arizona.
What kind of traction have you seen so far with customers, both on the commercial and government side?
Yeah. And I will be specific here, but I just want to tell you, and then I want to make this bold projection. When this upgraded silicon is available on the market in large quantities at the price we're talking about, the entire satellite industry will switch to it instantly. So that's my forecast. Now, we collected, and people react to it very positively. So they do want to see the performance. They want to see space heritage. They do want to see the proofs that this self-healing works. So we need to do some work to kind of demonstrate all that. But so far we collected over 200 million worth of LOIs, and there was one project that in the news with the company called Atomos Space that is developing solar electric propulsion tugs. So they're going to use our modules to make a rollout solar race that they will fly in early 25, which is a super exciting project for us. Yeah, so I think once we have production line up and running, and then we have product available in volumes, so this will open a lot of contracts for us. So we just need to get there, and we will be there sometimes by the end of this year.
Talk a little bit about the team, right? So you clearly know your stuff, and you've done an amazing job getting the company to where it is today. But who else is on the team? Who else are you working with?
Yeah, we have two technical co-founders, myself and Mikhail Reginevich. So my background was in solar R&D. His background was in semiconductor manufacturing, and he actually previously built and ran a solar cell production line. So there were two of us, and then we were joined by Andy Atherton, and then Andy brought the Silicon Valley experience to the team, and he actually really built the foundation for the company to grow. So the three senior execs, and then we brought business development help. We brought marketing help. We brought government business development help. The very first space person on the team was Dana Aponte, our head of product, who joined just half a year ago. So she was at Boeing in small sats for over 10 years. So this is our really first space person. For engineering and technician kind of workforce comes from, we have Intel in our backyard. We have ASU, so a lot of people have ASU kind of background. A lot of people have Intel background. So I think Phoenix for semiconductor manufacturing in general is not the worst place, and we enjoy having access to a lot of qualified engineers around.
Let's talk about financing. So I know you've raised some money so far. Where does the company stand today in terms of financing needs? And I don't know if you would like to share if you have any plans to fundraise in the near future.
Yeah. I wanna say, our seed round was a really great round. It was 10 million, and then the exciting thing about it is that it was led by Airbus Ventures, but it was joined by AI Horizon X. So if you think about, this is the first time they invested together. And that was super exciting. So, they were joined by other great investors, GPVC and Stellar and Industrious, and later Silent Ventures. So we were really happy with our seed round. And I can tell you we're about to kick off our Series A, which will be, 25. And this will actually allow us to start delivering a quality product, to a broader community of satellite manufacturers already this year. So, about to go out raising. So it's exciting. So we put together our pitch deck. We kind of do some test runs right now. Really hoping to find, deep tech investor who is passionate about space and kind of sharing our vision for, people doing a lot of things in space in the future and using a lot of energy for that.
When will you have your first array in space?
Exciting kind of thing. We're going out to Vandenberg, this weekend, and three panels are flying on Transporter 10 on Monday, and I hope it will fly well, and everything will be all right. So there are 2 commercial customers carrying our solar panels, and they're relatively small. One is 60 watt, the other 2 are like around 30 watt each. We're not the main payload, so we're not the main power generation thing. So we are a backup, but this is also the way for them to kind of test our technology and feel how it is working with us and everything. So super excited about next Monday. We're gonna fly to space, and we have pretty much on every upcoming transporter mission, we have a couple of customers with our solar panels on them.
That's amazing. That's huge. Well, an early congratulations. I know there's still a lot that you have to get through, but an early congratulations on fingers crossed. Let's keep it. Let's keep it that way. Fingers crossed. Amazing. Well, Stan, this is great. I mean, you very. It's funny. I was thinking about, can we talk about solar cells for 45 minutes, and we did. So, it's a super interesting topic, but. I want to transition for a second to talk a little bit about you and yourself for a second. You're deeply technical. You've been spending a long time on this technology. But what do you do for fun? What do you do when you're not thinking about solar cells?
Yeah, it's a scary thing, but since I started doing photovoltaics, I think it turned into my hobby, and this is what I hate in my lifestyle, and my family also hates that. But really, solar people are special. So they're on a mission to save the world and everything. So I think I got a little bit of that. But yeah, I like traveling. I like reading books.
So solar cells is what occupies 99% of your brain capacity. Yeah. I appreciate that. Are there any other companies that you're looking at, you're rooting at? I don't mean in solar, just in general. I mean, it could be in solar or energy production in general that you're like, you're keeping an eye on, you're watching. you're rooting for. Any other companies out there you want to highlight?
Yeah, I want to say I'm super excited about solar electric propulsion tug business model, and I really loved Mementos, in the early days, and I was I hope still the technologies that will work well. There is another one that I mentioned, the Atomo Space. So they use a different fuel, but they also need like a huge amount of power. And then the reason I'm excited about it, I'm looking at transportation in space, and I think it will evolve the same way the sailing ships evolve. So from kind of small things to frigates, and then we will see the spacecraft carrying like gigantic solar arrays just for transportation, just to move in space freely. So I think this will be happening, but we need to figure out the effective engine and to have a good fuel for that. So I really hope some of these companies are successful. And then I'm also excited about anyone going to the moon to do things. And if you ever heard about the company called Ethos Space, so they are, they're on a big mission, but they are potentially a big consumer of energy on the moon, to mine some resources and convert them to products, to fuels. And actually, anyone who's gonna use a lot of energy on the moon, I'm really excited about. So just want to bring in this too.
Amazing. Well, Stan, thank you. I appreciate it. This is great. This was really, really enjoyable. I loved talking about this topic, and I appreciate you being on the show. And best of luck on Monday. It's very, very exciting. And
thank you.
Looking forward to watching and monitoring and seeing how it goes.
Awesome.
I'm sure it's going to go great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Until next time.